Welcome to the Less Doing podcast, where you will learn how to start living more by doing less.
Let me help you optimize, automate, and outsource your entire life so you can focus on doing the things you love.
Now here's your host, Ari Meisel.
So I have the immense pleasure today of having a member of our Less Doing Leaders program on the podcast, which I get to do from time to time, and it's always a fun conversation. So, Mr. Ben Frank, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Ben is the president of Junior Reign, which is a youth ice hockey association in Southern California primarily. So let's start with a little bit of background about what you were doing before ice hockey, if there was anything before ice hockey.
Well, really, my whole life has been in ice hockey, growing up and things, and playing sports in general, and loving to do that. But I also always coached and things and worked with youth, even as even as a teenager. All of my jobs actually growing up were always as a camp counselor or a learn to skate coach or open gym supervisor and those kinds of things. And I went on and did bachelor's of physical health and education with kind of kinesiology background at University of Toronto. I was playing collegiate ice hockey. I was playing before that junior ice hockey, and then some minor professionally there. And my life just kind of always followed that path. As I ended up coming out to California. I'm originally from Toronto, from Canada. Came out to California as a pro roller hockey player, where there was a short boom of the sport in California, and ended up staying out there. So I was supposed to be in California for 3 months, and now we're 14 years later. I ended up becoming a director of for a hockey rink and their youth programs, and went on to take over and found my own organization after that. So it's really been kind of a lifelong passion and purpose and calling for me.
And so how did Junior Reign come about? What was the sort of need that you saw there that Junior Reign could fulfill?
Well, yeah, it's been quite a story, quite a journey for me. Like I said, initially I got into coaching youth after college and things, just because I loved the sport, and I just always connected with that. I didn't really know why I loved coaching youth so much. I thought it was just because I loved hockey and I wanted to continue doing that in my life, and rather than just go, get a regular job or something like that. And then that journey kind of took me down a unique path, is that I always found that I always wanted to do something much bigger. I coached a couple of teams and I would do some things, but I wanted to have a much bigger impact. And I had the opportunity at one point, this was 10 years ago now, to take over a small youth ice hockey organization. And so I jumped at that chance, but that really started in my life as an entrepreneur, and started that entrepreneurial journey where I wasn't just kind of doing my own thing. I was overseeing an organization and other coaches, and I kind of went into a whole new world that I wasn't used to or comfortable with. And I actually got exposed to kind of the dark side of what youth sports can be, and adult-driven agendas and things. And it really was kind of almost a breaking point for me, which in the end was a blessing, and got me in touch with, hey, why did I get into this in the first place? Why do I like doing this? And this doesn't feel right. I don't want to do this anymore. And if I'm going to do something like this, and I want to have a bigger impact and build something into something great and lasting, things have to be done differently. And that really kind of led to a whole series of events from there, just that soul-searching moment of kind of changing the whole future in the direction from being just a small youth ice hockey organization out of a facility to something that now is in multiple facilities across Southern California. And now that I have a bigger opportunity really on a national scale to influence other organizations and do some bigger work there as well.
So, without getting in, because I know that some of the details of the dark side of the coaching stuff that you mentioned could be very dark, but, at a high level, kind of like what are some of the general problems, for somebody who doesn't have access to one of your programs, or they're coaching, their kids somewhere in like Peoria, Illinois, like what are some of the big plagues in the industry right now?
Well, something that as I try to get more clear about my purpose and the impact I'm trying to have in youth sport, is I like to say that we help young people unleash their own inherent greatness through the youth sport. And it's, it sounds big, but really sport provides just a tremendous opportunity and platform to have massive impact in kids' lives and families' lives, and then change their future path for the rest of their lives, and changing the world around them. And I think, and I've seen that firsthand so many times with kids who have no confidence, or don't believe in themselves, or don't really know where they fit in socially and things, and just have amazing results. But I've also seen the other side of it, and then unfortunately, it's too easy for uh, sports has been around for a long time, and it sometimes can be forgotten of what is the root purpose of this, and why are we putting kids into sport, and what are we trying to accomplish, and it becomes too closely aligned with just being, when you're being fans of professional sport, for example, you applying those same principles to youth sport, and then it becomes adult centered instead of child or athlete centered. And so what happens is a series of other unintentional consequences. People that are not trying to do harm to kids, but they're designing a whole system around the adults' needs and desires and egos and agendas and things like that. And what happens is the kids who are supposed to be the center of it fall to the background, and kids don't generally speak up, for themselves, and are able to change the structures around them, and they almost become a kind of a victim of that system. And now the stats are clear that by the age of 13 or 14, 75 to 80% of kids are quitting youth sport, all organized youth sport altogether, and a lot of them don't even have interest in being involved in the physical activity and sport for the rest of their life, which is really kind of where the biggest benefits come from.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a pretty massive drop off rate. And how do you see this in terms of the kids that go through these kinds of programs? Because on the one hand, you have kids who maybe they really do want to be an athlete as a career, but others, I think, a lot of people who've played sports, or who are great leaders or business owners, a lot of them point to the coaching or the experience that they had as part of it, the positive ones at least, right? So, yeah. So, how do you see this changing the lives of the kids that you're working with?
Yeah, and that's I think the biggest misconception. People think it's either or, it's one or the other. So, first of all, the biggest reality that any of adults any adult that find themselves in a position of leadership in youth sport has a tremendous responsibility, because they're doing something that impacts kids, and those kids are not, they're not decision makers. They can't oftentimes decide their own environments. You have a tremendous responsibility to provide a growth opportunity for them. And people often think that you have to either, if you really want to be serious and help kids be an elite athlete, a professional or something, you got to have an approach this way. And what it does is it ends up compromising the rest of the athletes, because they're trying to pursue a some elite path for a select few, and then discarding the rest of them. When the reality is that if you focus on the bigger picture, to your point of if if your mission is to develop leaders and amazing people that can be business owners, and uh, firefighters and lawyers and doctors and these types of things, that those actual same principles of developing great people and great character and great experiences through sport will actually also be the best ways to develop the elite athletes and the professionals down the road as well. And people think that focusing on kind of the holistic long-term approach for everybody uh, kind of risks that elite track, and it's probably the biggest misconception there is in youth sport programming.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so, for you, as somebody who's growing this business, creating this business, there's other businesses like this, and I don't mean in terms of like youth sports or things like that, but there's other businesses where there's a evangelical element to the work that you do, right? You have to sort of get people on board with that. You're not just providing a tangible result. There's something intangible and hopefully something transformational that comes across here. So, how does that impact the way that you grow the business?
Yeah, so the messaging is really important of saying who you are, and being completely confident with it. I think with any business, right? I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make, and like I said, this applies to a business, whether you're a business, a facility owner, or a youth sport club owner, or a foundation or a nonprofit board, youth sport board, is being clear and confident with who you are and what your purpose is. versus just trying to please everybody, or appeal to everybody. And what I found is that if you really get to the heart and you're clear about it, the vast majority of people who put their kids into sport want something that's great for their kid. They're well intentioned. They want their kid to be successful. They want their kid to grow and learn. They want their kid to get those benefits. And if you really speak to the heart of if you get kind of deep to the heart of that versus kind of just focusing on the surface level things, like maybe someone wants to win a trophy, or they want their kid to be the best player out there so they can feel good and things like that. If you get deeper than that and you're willing to challenge the other surface things that don't get the long-term result that people are really looking for, if you really do some soul searching on it, I think that goes a long way. And so what we've tried to do since we really changed the whole way we're doing things 4 or 5 years ago, was just be really upfront with, hey, this is who we are, this is what we're about, so that people are coming into it with that expectation and understanding, and we can hold strong to what our purpose is and not get swayed in different directions.
So then that's no small task, obviously, but so what is for you, and granted, I know some of this because we work together, but what is the biggest challenge for you in the business at this point?
Well, I think it is that kind of countercultural educational piece of getting people to getting people to take the time with us to go deeper to what are they trying to get out of this long term, right? This is it's a society which technology and things have provided, and your program in general, right? There's a lot of amazing advantages to being able to get what you want right now, immediately. And when we're talking about kids and their athletic development and really just their overall development, it's a long term approach, right? It's a long term benefit of what are we going to get at the end of this? What kind of person is my child going to become? What kind of athlete are they going to become? And the other part is there's so much there's a desire to kind of manipulate the situation, and you want your kid to be successful so badly that you're trying to protect them from all the different variables, and you're trying to kind of force this path. And I often say that developing an athlete and developing a child it's not like constructing a building, right? People approach it almost as constructing a building. They think that if they just go harder and faster and they can do it themselves and they can kind of build something themselves. It's much more like growing a tree, right? The greatness is already inside the seed of the tree. There's nothing you can do to make that grow faster. You're trying to create the right environment, and you're nurturing it and you're guiding it to help that grow. But you can't just go harder at it every day. You're going to kill the tree if you just start watering and watering and watering. So getting people to take a step back and say, hey, this is about my child's long-term growth, and what do I want for them, and even what I want for them. It's not that I want them to be a professional hockey player and make $1 million, or I want them to be the best player. It's what do I want for them to be able to decide for themselves. And as we even talk about it, right, it seems it's a very kind of high level, kind of a softer type conversation, is more of a philosophical conversation. And it's not something that tomorrow now you can sign up for a program and now get that result. It's something that you have to see and work towards as a partnership with an organization that you're with that's aligned in those values, and really be patient and being willing to kind of go through the ups and the downs of that, knowing that you're staying on that path versus getting caught up in the reactive trying to make something happen for a child. And that's the biggest challenge, like I said, in this day and age in this society, is getting people to really understand and buy into that long-term vision for their kid.
Now, and in knowing you are very philosophical and very heady about what you're doing. And again, it's a big mission. How do you sort of spread that effectively throughout the culture of clearly the kids that you're working with, but more the team members that you bring on and the coaches that you do work with?
Yeah, the interesting thing is what I found is the more outward and clear I've been about what we are wanting to do, the better people we've attracted, and oftentimes we repel the right people as well. So when we kind of went through a transformation as far as how we do things, we became a model association by USA Hockey. So USA Hockey named us one of the 21 model associations across the United States for a commitment to long-term athlete development principles. We had to even to be named as that, we had to do a lot of things that are different in the way that we train our athletes and the way that we structure our programs and things. So two things there is to answer your question is, number one, be very outward about the purpose and the mission, and that's attracted people, coaches and staff members, and even volunteers that are passionate about the same thing, that see the same thing problems, and that want the same things for their kids, to love sport, to love athletics, to strive for something, to learn life lessons, to learn how to work through adversity, and to be leaders in society and in sport. And those attracted people to us have been very passionate. Versus in the past, we had people that just wanted to coach or whatever, but they weren't really attached to a bigger mission and really passionate about that. And what we found is when people are that way, then as you go along through the natural ups and downs and things, they're much more anchored to that bigger mission. But then at the same time, to your point, I speak philosophically a lot. We have to bring it down to the ground and make it specific and understandable for people as well. And that's where the sports science and things comes into play. And we really do our best to really make things clear. We've developed a curriculum for all of our age groups, for example, that where people can understand the science of, this is how many training sessions per week, and this is what we're doing, and these are how we're measuring it, and those types of things, to truly try to help people along that path towards the big picture.
So this is usually the last question that I always like to ask is, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for people to be more effective? You can interpret that however you like.
Sure. Well, I was thinking about this actually because obviously we're part of your leaders program, which is excellent. Which is, that's maybe a whole nother conversation. Is some of the philosophies that we've applied to our own organization. So maybe I could take this in 2 directions. There's one advice that I'd have for the parents, and it's certainly a less doing principle to do something right. I forget where the quote comes from, right? There's 2 ways to do things: to do it right or to do it again, right? And I've seen when people get stuck in chasing the wrong things with their kid, it is exhausting. And the amount of wasted time and traveling and running around trying to find the right thing that you can't seem to find, it's just the toll that can take on families and their own careers and their own work lives and things can be tremendous. And so my biggest advice for parents is number one is that it's got to be the kids experience and their own ownership, and it's got to be what they want out of it. Because I've seen a lot of people invest so much into trying to create something for their kid, and at a young age they will do it because you told them to and you're bringing them there. But by the time, and they invest countless amounts of money and time and effort and things, and then by the time their kid is a teenager and they start making their own decisions, they're out. They're done because it was never theirs to begin with. It was their parents' goals and not their goals, or their coach's goals, or someone else's goals. And now there's this disconnect now because the parents feel they've invested so much and they're upset towards their child who's kind of thrown it away, but they don't want to do that anymore because it's not their thing. So we have to find a way to make it theirs. And so at the young age it's about exposing them to the right environment where they can fall in love with it. So if you want them to have some kind of future in sport, to provide an environment where they're going to fall in love with it and then take ownership over it themselves, and then talk to them about their own goals and things as you go along, so that you can help them pursue their goals. And that's going to lead to a lasting, healthy relationship with sport, and a lot less chasing other things if you're following their own goals and passions. And then number 2 is focusing on that holistic kind of bigger picture of what you're getting from youth sport, and not getting caught in running here and running there, and focusing on what are we trying to get out of this long term for my child. And number 3 would be to just really carefully and intentionally select that environment. Don't just kind of trust every youth sport environment and just kind of randomly go from one thing to the next. Really investigate it, understand what your child's goals are, what kind of long-term bigger picture effect you want for them, and then find out who the people are, the leaders and things that are in charge of that environment, and if it's the right environment for you and your child. And that will save you tremendous amounts of time and effort and stress over the years with your child in youth sport.
Okay, well, those are awesome, and I really see those as widely applicable to lots of businesses. That's why I was really excited to have this. Is sort of a different kind of conversation, but in my opinion, this is super applicable to the way that people are building their businesses and the way that they are treating their customers and inculcating culture and all those kinds of things. But since you brought it up about less doing and the leaders program, let's talk about how some of that has really been able to make it so that you can do more of what you do so well.
For sure, and I'm actually something I'm really excited about because since the success that we've had with our organization, after becoming named a model association and the way that we applied it and things, I've been invited to speak around the country at a lot of different events. I've spoken at the USA Hockey National Congress. I spoke at the US LaxCon. It's the US Lacrosse Annual Summit, Rush Soccer Annual Summit. So some of these things, and I've talked to them about more about our programming, how we've changed things, and how we've changed the culture of our organization. And people have been excited about and have helped a lot of other youth organizations and how to kind of construct their culture that way. Now, what I'm excited about is that's been very philosophical based, and a lot of them have called me afterwards and things, and I've always been excited to help them with changing the culture and the programming for their own organization. But there's a lot of little things that when they actually have to do it can be very challenging, and that's where some of the things that we've learned in the Less Doing program to do things much more efficiently and use technology and automate things can really help these organizations, because some of the biggest things you always talk about, Ari, is communication is number one. And some of the things we've been able to implement both externally and internally can really be a game changer. And oftentimes youth organizations have limited amount of resources and people and things like that. So just to give you some very specific examples, using Voxer, I know you interviewed the founder on your podcast, using Voxer, which is like the walkie-talkie type thing internally. All of our coaches and our staff team, we have daily check-ins, but we also have different channels where they give reports of games and of certain things that are happening. So we stay in touch, so we know what's happening with the teams and with the athletes about how things are going, really just quickly and efficiently, so a coach can just finish a game, tap to talk, and provide an update. Versus in the past, we would try to have them write up game reports or things like that, and then of course they get busy, and then people got to go read them, and all these things, and so it was just inefficient. Other things like your content machine and things like that, to actually get the message out there to the world, to help people see what we're doing, and to help them also be educated about how they can help their child and things as well. Tremendous differences there. And then even internally, like with data and things. So you suggested an Airtable for us where we can actually track notes on every player and goal meetings and things about them, so that as a whole organization, we actually can look at like the status and the growth and the history of each player internally very quickly from our phones or from anywhere, so we can really help serve the athlete and their goals, because we have these channels of communication that we can all like collaborate and look at and help the athletes the most. And it's a game changer for our youth organization.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been wonderful working with you all this time now. So Ben, where can people find out more about Junior Brain, and maybe even, learning about bringing what you do to their own youth hockey or sports associations?
Great. So Junior Reign it's juniorreign.com, JRREIGN.com. And that's where actually the youth program for professional team Ontario Reign, which is the minor league team for the Los Angeles Kings in the NHL. So juniorreign.com. And then I'm on social media. It's Coach Ben Frank on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. With your help and processes, I'll be launching a podcast very soon called Sport Transformers. I'll have that stuff on my social media, and that's where I'm going to talk kind of deeper about the different people and roles that can help transform sport and transform people and experiences through sport. The coaches, the leaders, especially, and the athletes and parents as well. So I'll be launched on my social media, Coach Ben Frank, and you can find information and contact me right directly through there.
Well, as you know, I cannot wait for that podcast to come out. So, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and have a great day.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Less Doing podcast. At Less Doing, we help entrepreneurs who have opportunity in excess of what their infrastructure can support to set up systems and processes that empower a team to ultimately make themselves more replaceable. That way, they can optimize, automate, and outsource everything in their businesses in order to be more effective. If you want to find out more about Less Doing, the podcast, the blog, the books, and all of the wonderful programs we offer to help you get from where you are to where you know you want to be, go to lessdoing.com/podcast and check out our OAO blueprint so you can get started today.